Hey everyone, and welcome back to Talk Cancers. Today we're going to dive into a paper that has me really excited.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's about symbolic regression and this really cool new tool called rEGGression.
Interesting.
It is. So symbolic regression, just as a refresher for everyone, it's all about finding these human-readable mathematical equations, ones that can describe complex phenomena.
Right.
Like say, for example, how a battery's performance might change over time.
Okay, yeah.
Symbolic regression can actually find an equation
Interesting.
that describes that whole relationship.
Oh.
But the problem is that traditional symbolic regression methods, they often just give you this huge, overwhelming mountain of equations.
Too many,
Way too many to even know where to start.
Yeah.
And the thing is, not all equations are created equal, right?
Right, definitely not.
Some might be super complex and hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
Others might be oversimplified and not really capture the full picture.
Exactly.
And on top of that, as researchers, we often have very specific needs.
Huh.
Like maybe we're looking for models with certain properties, or we want to incorporate some prior knowledge that we have into that search process.
Makes sense.
Exactly. So it's kind of like searching for a needle in a haystack. Except the haystack is made entirely of equations.
Oh, wow.
And you don't even really know what the needle looks like to begin with.
That's a tough problem.
It is. It's a very messy problem.
Yeah.
And that's precisely where rEGGression comes in.
Okay.
It gives us this really neat way to explore that absolutely massive space of potential equations.
Yeah.
But to do it efficiently and with way more control than we've ever had before.
Interesting. So how does it work?
Well, it all boils down to this really cool data structure called an E-graph.
E-graph, okay.
Yeah, have you heard of these before?
I have, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners haven't.
Yeah, they're not super common knowledge, but they're super cool.
Yeah.
Basically, an E-graph is like, imagine a librarian who's like really good at organizing books.
All right, I like that analogy.
Instead of just having every single equation on a separate shelf, right?
Yeah.
The E-graph groups together expressions that are mathematically equivalent, even if they might look completely different on the surface.
So like different ways of writing the same thing.
Exactly. So like all the equations that essentially say the same thing, those will get grouped together.
Gotcha.
So you end up with this much more organized and compact representation of all those equations.
So it's like instead of having like 5 copies of the same book,
you
just have 1 copy and a note saying there's 5 of them.
Exactly.
Well,
and that is a fantastic analogy.
Thanks.
And that clever organization, that's exactly what makes rEGGression so efficient.
Okay, I see.
Because instead of having to analyze each and every single equation separately, rEGGression can actually operate on those entire groups of equations together.
Oh, wow. That's smart.
And that makes the whole exploration process so much faster.
It has to, right? Because we're talking about like tons of equations.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about a truly absurd number of equations that symbolic regression can generate.
Definitely.
So that speed boost is absolutely essential.
For sure.
But let's get a little more practical here, all right? Let's look at an example.
Sounds good.
The paper actually demonstrates rEGGression using a data set from NASA about battery performance.
Oh, cool.
So what was it about this example that really stood out to you?
Well, the thing is, rEGGression doesn't just like spit out one best equation and call it a day, It actually gives you this whole toolkit to play with.
Okay.
So you can filter and explore all of those different models based on your specific research questions.
So it's not just like a black box, it's more interactive.
Exactly. It's more like having this customizable research assistant,
I like that, yeah.
So like, let's say you're only interested in models that are relatively simple, easy to understand.
Yeah.
You can use what they call the top command
to
filter the models by their complexity or their size, or even by how many parameters they use.
So if I'm trying to explain, whatever phenomenon it is to somebody who's not a math whiz, I can prioritize those simpler models.
For sure.
That's actually really useful.
Very useful. Or let's say you have a hunch about a specific type of relationship in the data.
Oh.
Like you suspect there might be some cyclical pattern, maybe related to how the battery's charged and discharged,
So like how the seasons affect the spread of a virus.
Yeah, exactly. You see those peaks and valleys in the data.
Right.
So rEGGression actually lets you do this really cool thing. It's called pattern matching.
Oh, okay.
You can actually search for equations that contain specific building blocks or like structures, like maybe you're looking for trigonometric functions to capture those cyclical patterns.
It's really cool.
It's really powerful. It's like having a detective's magnifying glass for symbolic regression.
Now, that's what I call getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
But the paper goes even further.
Yeah, there's more.
It mentions some other commands, like there's report, there's subtrees. What are those all about?
So the report command is like, imagine getting a super detailed report card.
Okay.
But for a specific model.
Right.
It tells you all sorts of things about that model, like its mean squared error.
MSE, right.
Yep, exactly. Which tells you how well the model actually predicts the data.
Right.
And then it also tells you about its R-squared value, which is a measure of how much of the variation in the data is actually explained by the model.
Okay.
But it also gives you information about the description length.
Okay.
Which is basically like, how concisely can we actually express this equation?
So like a shorter equation is probably better because it's easier to understand.
Exactly. So it's not just about finding a model that fits the data well. It's also about finding a model that actually makes sense and is easy to communicate.
That makes sense.
Right. And then you have the subtrees command.
Okay.
This is one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So imagine you have this really complex model.
Okay.
And you really want to understand which parts of that model are actually driving its performance.
So like taking apart a clock to see how all the gears and springs work together?
Perfect analogy. That's exactly what the subtrees command lets you do.
Really?
Yeah, you can actually break down that complex model into its individual components.
Wow.
And you can see which ones are actually the most important.
That's awesome.
And sometimes what's really cool is that you might discover these simpler, more interpretable submodels that were kind of hidden within that larger, more complex model.
So it's like finding hidden treasure within a treasure chest.
Exactly.
But wait, there's more, isn't there?
There's always more.
The paper also mentions this insert command.
Oh, yes, the insert command.
What's that all about?
Well, the insert command is for all the tinkerers out there, you know?
Okay.
All the what-if explorers.
Yeah.
It basically lets you test out your own hypotheses.
Oh, cool.
By plugging in new equations or maybe even modifying existing ones within the e-graph.
So you can experiment?
You can totally experiment. Like maybe you have an intuition about a specific mathematical relationship, or you want to try combining insights from different models that you've generated. The insert command gives you that flexibility to see what happens.
It's like a playground for symbolic regression.
Exactly, a playground for equations. And then, to top it all off, we have the Pareto command.
Pareto.
Yeah, so this command helps you visualize the trade-offs between model accuracy and model complexity.
All right, I see.
It's like having a map that shows you the peaks of accuracy and the valleys of simplicity.
So you can find that balance.
You can find that sweet spot.
Really?
You have a model that's both effective but also understandable.
That makes sense.
Right.
So with all these commands, it really sounds like rEGGression gives researchers so much control over that model exploration process.
A ton of control, yeah.
But I'm curious, what happens after you've explored all those different models and you've maybe even identified a few promising candidates?
Yeah.
How do you actually go about extracting meaningful insights from those models?
That's where another really key feature of regression comes in.
Okay.
It's called the distribution command.
Distribution.
Yeah. So let's go back to that NASA battery example for a second.
Right.
Imagine you've generated, a whole bunch of different models using regression. Now you want to understand what those models are actually telling you about how batteries work.
Okay, yeah.
The distribution command analyzes all those top performing models.
Okay.
And it tells you which mathematical building blocks appear most frequently.
So it's like taking a census of all the important math terms.
It is. It's like a popularity contest for equations.
That's a great way to put it.
And this information is super valuable.
Okay.
Because it can reveal those hidden patterns in the data that you might not have noticed otherwise.
So for example, it could maybe show you that a specific type of exponential function appears in a lot of those best performing models.
Yeah, exactly. And that could suggest that, say, the battery's discharge rate follows this exponential decay pattern, which could be incredibly valuable for researchers trying to actually improve battery technology.
Absolutely.
Right. And what's cool is that this analysis, it can either confirm existing intuitions that experts in the field might already have, or it can even spark completely new hypotheses and research directions.
So it's like having a conversation with the data itself.
I like that.
Where rEGGression is acting as the interpreter.
That's a great way to put it.
And I think that's what's so exciting about this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's bridging that gap between these complex mathematical models and our human understanding.
Absolutely.
But I do have one more question.
Sure.
How does rEGGression actually play with other symbolic regression tools that are out there?
Oh, that's a great question. And it kind of leads us to one of the most impressive aspects of rEGGression.
Yep.
It's openness and inclusivity.
Open and inclusive.
Yeah.
You mean like everyone's invited to the symbolic regression party?
Exactly. rEGGression is designed to work seamlessly with models that are generated by other popular symbolic regression software.
Yeah.
Like, Operon, Bingo, PYSR, Heuristic Lab.
It's not limited to just one specific algorithm.
Nope, not at all.
That's really cool.
It's really a platform.
Okay.
A meeting ground for models from all sorts of different backgrounds.
So it's like a United Nations of symbolic regression.
Yeah, I love that.
Bringing together all these different approaches to solve problems collaboratively.
Exactly. And that open approach, it means that researchers can actually leverage the strengths of all these different algorithms. And they can explore a much wider range of models, which leads to even richer insights.
Wow, it seems like the creators of regression really thought of everything.
They really did. They were very thorough in addressing the needs of the research community.
And how easy is it for someone to get started with rEGGression?
Super easy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the software is open source, well documented.
Right.
And there's a really great community of users that's always growing.
That's great to hear.
And they're always willing to help.
That's awesome, because I know symbolic regression can be a little intimidating from a technical standpoint.
For sure.
So it sounds like rEGGression provides this really user-friendly entry point into this really powerful field.
Absolutely. And as more and more researchers start using it and they share their findings, that community is just going to keep growing.
Right.
And the software is just going to keep getting better and better.
It's a win-win.
Exactly.
I am so excited to see how hard regression shapes the future of symbolic regression.
Me too.
And honestly, just scientific discovery in general.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
A real testament to human ingenuity,
Absolutely.
And just the potential of AI.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for our deep dive into regression, at least for this part.
It's been a good one.
But don't worry, we will be back next week.
We'll be back
To continue our discussion about regression and its potential
It's gonna be great.
to revolutionize scientific discovery.
Can't wait.
But for now, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
A lot to digest.
So until next time, everyone, keep those neurons firing.
And keep exploring.
We'll see you on our next deep dive into the cutting edge of machine learning research.
Hi, everyone.
See ya.
Okay, so generating new scientific hypotheses with regression sounds amazing.
It does.
Like in theory, but how would we actually
how would it work?
How would we do it?
In real life.
What kind of data sets are we even talking about here?
Right, yeah.
So I think the most obvious place to start would be scientific papers themselves.
Makes sense.
Right. Like imagine this massive database with millions of articles.
Oh, wow.
From all sorts of different disciplines,
Okay, yeah, I can picture that.
Physics, chemistry, biology, you name it.
We've got this giant digital library of scientific knowledge just waiting to be analyzed.
Right, but papers aren't just equations, are they?
They're not, no.
They've got, text, figures, tables, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So how would rEGGression actually handle all that?
That's a good question.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because remember how we were talking about combining rEGGression with natural language processing? This is where all that comes in.
Right.
We could actually use NLP to extract key concepts, relationships from that text.
So it's like we're teaching rEGGression to read scientific papers.
Yeah, actually read them.
Not just the equations.
It's not just the equations, but
the context.
The whole context around them.
That's really cool.
It is. So once rejection has this deeper understanding, right, of the scientific literature, then it can start to look for those hidden connections and patterns.
That can point to new hypotheses.
Exactly.
So, for example, it could identify mathematical structures that show up in papers from totally unrelated fields.
Right.
Which could, hint at some underlying connection between those fields.
Yeah, that we never would have noticed before.
That's amazing.
Right. Or it could even, identify gaps in our current understanding.
Oh, which
areas where certain types of equations or relationships are just, conspicuously absent.
They're missing.
Okay. Which could indicate that, hey, there's something interesting here.
There's something we need to look into.
This could be fertile ground for new research.
Now, that is what I call thinking outside the box.
Right. It's pretty cool.
But let's be realistic for a second.
Okay, yeah.
Building a system like this is going to be a massive undertaking.
It's a huge project. Yeah. We're talking about analyzing millions of papers, extracting all this complex information.
And then somehow turning it into meaningful scientific hypotheses.
It's a lot.
What are some of the biggest challenges you think we'd face?
So data quality is always a big one, you know?
Of course,
because scientific papers are written by humans, and humans, well, we make mistakes. We're not always perfectly consistent or accurate, so
there's going to be noise in the data.
There's going to be noise, there's going to be inconsistencies.
Different authors might use different words for the same thing.
Exactly. They might use different terminology, different notation.
And there might even be straight up errors in the equations.
Yeah, for sure.
So we need to figure out how to clean that up.
We need really robust methods for cleaning and standardizing that data.
To make sure regression has a solid foundation to work with.
And then there's the whole natural language processing side of things.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Getting computers to understand all the nuances of human language.
Especially scientific language.
Which
is so specialized.
Yeah.
It's still a huge challenge.
It is.
So we'd need some pretty big advancements in NLP.
Okay.
To make sure that rEGGression can accurately extract the meaning and the context
from that text,
from all that scientific text.
We might even need specialized NLP models.
Oh, definitely.
That are trained specifically on scientific literature.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so those are some pretty big hurdles to overcome.
They are. They're not trivial.
But let's say, just for fun, that we managed to solve all those problems.
Right.
We built this incredible system. It's crunched through all these millions of papers.
Yeah.
And it's spitting out potential hypotheses.
Left and right.
Left and right. How do we know?
Good question. If those hypotheses are even worth pursuing.
That's where the humans come back in.
Okay.
Right? The goal here is not to replace scientists.
No, of course not.
But to augment them.
To give them a helping hand.
To give them better tools, right? So it's imagine having this AI research assistant.
Okay.
That gives you a list of, potentially interesting research directions. But then you, as the human scientist, you use your expertise, your intuition.
To decide which ones are worth following.
Exactly. The AI can help us sift through that huge sea of data.
The vast ocean of data.
And identify things we might have missed.
But ultimately, it's up to us to actually do the science.
Right. To design the experiments, to interpret the results.
Because science isn't just about crunching numbers. It's about creativity, critical thinking.
Human curiosity.
The drive to understand the world.
Absolutely. And that collaboration between AI and human intelligence.
It's what makes this whole field so exciting.
It really is.
We're on the verge of something truly groundbreaking.
I think so.
So let's say we have this system.
Okay.
It's up and running. It's generating hypotheses.
Yeah.
What kind of impact could this have?
Big impact.
On different fields.
That's huge.
Let's start with medicine.
Okay, yeah.
What could this do for medicine?
So in medicine, this system could help us identify new drug targets.
Okay.
Or treatment strategies.
Interesting.
Right. Imagine analyzing all the research on a particular disease.
Yeah.
And finding these hidden connections between biological pathways.
Okay.
Or genetic markers.
So we could find new ways to attack the disease.
Yeah. Or develop more personalized treatments.
Based on a patient's unique genes.
Exactly. Or we could even identify potential side effects of drugs.
Before they even get to clinical trials.
Which would...
That would save so much time and money.
Yeah, and potentially even lives.
That would be incredible.
Right.
What about material science?
Oh, material science, yeah.
How could this apply there?
So material science is all about understanding the properties of different materials.
Yeah.
Finding ways to create new materials with specific properties.
Right, yeah.
So imagine this system analyzing all the data on different materials and finding these hidden patterns.
That link.
Yeah, that link their composition, their structure, their properties.
So we could design materials that are lighter.
Lighter, yeah.
Stronger.
Stronger.
More durable.
More durable, yeah.
Maybe even have properties that we haven't even thought of yet.
Right. It could revolutionize industries
oh, wow.
Aerospace, construction, electronics.
And then there's climate change.
A big one, yeah.
How could this technology contribute to addressing that?
Climate change is,
It's complicated.
It's a very complex problem.
Yeah.
Lots of interconnected factors.
And then...
And this system could really help us understand those connections more deeply by analyzing tons of climate data, historical temperature records, atmospheric composition,
ocean currents,
all of it.
Wow.
You're right.
So it could help us develop better climate models.
Yeah.
Identify more effective ways to
mitigate the effects
of climate change.
Yeah, or even discover new ways to capture and store carbon dioxide.
The possibilities are endless.
They really are.
And these are just a few examples.
Just scratching the surface.
This technology really could revolutionize,
I think so,
every field of science.
It could change everything.
By helping us see the bigger picture.
The
connections in ways that we never could before.
Absolutely.
It's almost like we're giving scientists a superpower.
It's like a cognitive superpower.
The ability to see through all the noise.
Yeah.
All the complexity.
And find the underlying order.
And see the beauty.
I like that.
That's a good way to put it.
It is beautiful.
But let's come back down to Earth for a second.
Okay.
Because while we're dreaming about all these future possibilities, our regression is already a really powerful tool.
It is. It's ready to go.
That researchers can use right now. Today.
To solve real-world problems.
Like that NASA battery data set.
Exactly.
rEGGression can help researchers in all sorts of fields.
Yeah.
Analyze their data.
Build better models.
Extract insights.
It's already happening.
And as more people start using it and share their results, we're going to start to see the real impact.
I think so.
Rippling across different fields.
It's going to be exciting to watch.
So it's not just theoretical, it's practical.
Very practical.
And who knows, maybe those practical applications will lead to those big breakthroughs.
I hope so.
That we've been talking about.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's what makes this research so exciting.
It is.
It has the potential to transform both our present
and our future.
Okay, well, I think it's time for us to take a short break.
Sounds good.
Let our listeners process all this amazing information.
Take a deep breath.
And when we come back, we'll dive into some listener questions.
Have fun.
And explore some other really fascinating aspects.
Can't wait.
Of rEGGression.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to Talk Tensors, everyone. So before the break, we were really deep in the hypothetical, kind of imagining rEGGression, just like revolutionizing the whole scientific process.
We have some thought experiment, right?
It is. But we shouldn't forget, this tool is actually out there.
Yeah.
It's ready to use, right now.
Absolutely. And it's, more than just those commands we've talked about. It's designed for researchers.
Okay.
Like real researchers. So for instance, it can actually import models from other symbolic regression software.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like Operon, Bingo, PYSR, all those.
Wait, so I can take models I've already made using my favorite tool and just
plug them right in.
Plug them into regression.
Yep.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. And this interoperability, it's really key.
Okay.
Because it means our regression isn't tied to one specific algorithm.
Right. It's more of a platform.
It's a platform.
A meeting ground.
Yeah.
It's
like the United Nations of symbolic regression.
Yes. I love that. Bringing together all these different approaches to solve problems collaboratively.
I like that a lot. It's a good analogy.
It is. It is. And that means researchers can use the strengths of all these different algorithms.
Exactly.
And explore this much wider range of models.
And hopefully
get richer insights.
Yeah. Seems like they really thought of everything when they made this thing. They really did their homework. They listened to the research community.
How easy is it to get started with it if someone's never used it before?
Oh, it's really easy.
Really?
Yeah, it's open source. The documentation's really good.
Yeah, good.
And there's a great growing community.
That's always good.
Of people who are really helpful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So because I know symbolic regression can be a little intimidating for people.
Yeah, it can be.
From a technical side.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is a really good entry point.
It is.
Into this really powerful field.
A nice on-ramp.
I'm excited to see what people do with this.
Me too.
It's going to be really cool to see how it shapes, not just symbolic regression, but just scientific discovery in general.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what we can do when we,
combine our brains.
Combine human ingenuity and the power of AI.
Powerful combo.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for our deep dive into rEGGression.
This has been fun.
I hope everyone listening found it informative and interesting.
Lots to think about.
We encourage everyone to check out the paper. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely give it a read.
even if you're not, a machine learning expert.
There's something in there for everyone.
Yeah, the ideas are relevant to anyone who's just like curious about the world,
I think so.
So keep those minds curious.
Keep those neurons firing.
We'll catch you all on the next deep dive into the cutting edge of machine learning research.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.